up just to keep us on track for the next release. Before we get started, I want to have a couple general announcements. First and most exciting is Dragon related. We do have new Backdrop t-shirts and hoodies available as thank you gifts on our backdropcms.org contribute page. If you want to make a donation for $25, you get this adorable dragon t-shirt. And if you are a contributor to Backdrop, then you get a t-shirt anyway because you've already earned one. So we mailed off a bunch just this morning, actually. It's a little late in getting those out. But you will have them in the next 3 to 5 days. So keep an eye out, contributors, on those coming your way. We handed out a ton at Midcamp. They were pretty popular. They're very soft and comfortable and breathable and covered with dragons, so having you around. We also have a hoodie available. It says Backdrop on it, which you can get for a $50 contribution. That's our thank you gift for those people. So if you are worried about the winter approaching and you need something warm, put your hoodie over and keep your ears comfortable. They're very soft and comfortable, and also will keep you warm. So consider making a contribution, and we'll mail one of those off as well. The cost of mailing is included in the cost of your contribution. So thank you in advance, anyone who's interested in shirts or hoodies. All right. We have no, well, okay, there's a couple of other announcements. Drupal Camp Utah, which is March 4th through 5th, is looking for people to attend to speak about Backdrop. So if you're interested in getting some skiing done early next year, have friends or families in Salt Lake City, and want to go participate in a Drupal event, they're looking for Backdrop speakers there, so that might be a fun thing to do. We have free PHP Storm licenses for Backdrop Contrib developers. As always, send an email to info@backdropcms.org for more information on any of those. We have no urgent updates from PMC this week. Nate, do you want to talk about community growth?
Yeah, so kind of same story as usual. The steady march of progress continues forward. We actually did have an applicant. Oh, this is actually really exciting. Actually, we had an applicant to the Contrib group saying that he ported Honeypot module, but of course we already had Honeypot module ported. So so he's just chilling out until he runs across another situation in which he needs to port a module. But the exciting thing about it is that he said that he's writing a book for A-Press, which will probably be the first Backdrop
book.
Yeah, which is very exciting. Let me see if I can. I can't recall the name. I don't think he actually has a. He hasn't actually posted his full name to his GitHub profile, so I don't actually know who he is. But let's see. Drupal 8 Todd. Yeah, Drupal 8 Todd. Whoever Drupal 8 Todd is, he's writing a book for A-Press, which is pretty exciting. And so he ported Honeypot module as one of the chapters in the book. So that's still pretty exciting, even though we had that module ported already. It's exciting that he went through that process as a demonstration.
Does the current person who ported Honeypot, does that module have maintainers?
Yeah, I actually said the same thing, that he could collaborate with the existing maintainers. Who I think that the existing maintainers might be Quackers 8Me, which is funny because they both have the number 8 in their handles. Hang on, let me double check that. Oh no, that's Herb Duel, and Herb's been pretty active on and on. I think that he's probably reasonably active, but yeah, it would be nice if they work together. And due to the recent GitHub changes, he actually can collaborate on a project without being granted access to the entire Contrib group. So anybody that can edit the individual projects, which they should if they are in the author group, I think, they can now invite individuals to collaborate on a project without going through the application process, which is interesting, and an alternative instead of.
I don't think we have anything set up that way now. We don't have any groups or sub-projects or anything.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. GitHub recently changed it so you don't need groups of sub-projects anymore. You can invite an individual user to an individual repository without putting them into a group first. So it's an interesting option that instead of going through the contrib process, an existing maintainer can grant access to one of their projects directly to people without going through the application process.
That seems like not what we want at all.
Well, I mean, that person still can't create a new project, and they still can't make a new module. They only have access to the one project that they have. It's the same as
but they have commit access to a project without having agreed to terms and conditions or whatever.
Yeah, I guess
not
that's
being part of the community.
Well, anyway, maybe we'll just forget I said that. Anyway, so since last week, there's been one new project created in the Backdrop contrib group, and likewise, there's been one new release or one new project added to the official list of projects on backdropcms.org, bringing us up to 167 total projects, and 92 of those with official releases that are on backdropcms.org. Great, as always. If you have a project on GitHub that hasn't yet had an official release created, you can tag that project on GitHub with a version string like 1.x dash the version string, so 1.x to indicate backdrop 1 dash 1.0.0, for example, for 1.0.0. And then once you've made that tag, then you can publish that as a release on GitHub, and that will automatically synchronize with backdropcms.org to make that project more visible to the internet. Let's see, we have 42 total contrib authors, same as last week, other than that one that application that's duplicated in an existing module. But here's hoping he'll come back and get another project ported.
Or be a collaborator on the existing Honeypot project.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go on to infrastructure. So infrastructure update status checking. We have this issue where our numbers aren't accruing correctly. That is still an issue. Last week, Gore and I were chatting in IRC that he has been working on or trying to come up with a proof of concept of alternatives for collecting number scripts. I'm not sure about that. Like, I think that short term, the best thing to do would just be able to fix the script. I mean, it's just a 100-line PHP script that if we get it fixed, then we would start having usage statistics that were accruing historical data. But that is currently broken. But Gore is looking into doing some kind of alternative that would replace the current PHP script. Anyway, that's issue number 9 in the project module. So backdrop contrib /project. There's an issue key there, and issue number 9 is that particular problem. Once that gets sorted out, we also want to make it so that project module, besides collecting which modules were turned on and off, could collect other data like whether or not clean URLs is turned on or off, or the configuration of certain settings, to basically start accruing other numbers besides just what modules are turned on. And that way we can make some better decisions about which features people are using and which ones they're not, or if a feature is overwhelmingly always set to one option instead of the default, maybe we should change that default to be the new option, that sort of thing. Let's see, and once we get our historical data working, we'd like to add some charts to the website, which would also be great. I think probably for starters, we could work on porting some kind of charts module for Backdrop, which I don't think we have any at the moment. So that would be a good intermediate step, is making a contrib version or contrib solution for charts, and then we can implement that on backdropcms.org once we have that data from project usage. Let's see, the project browser server, so we are hoping to make it so that you can install, or not just install, but find modules through Backdrop, an installation of Backdrop without needing to leave your own website. And it looks like since last week, Doc Wilmot posted an update to that issue, which is issue 870. And it looks like he's waiting on a pull request review, which looks like we can probably merge that. And that should fix a problem with the server and get that issue unblocked. Okay, next item, Drush for Backdrop. This one actually has some interesting news. So Drush for Backdrop is issue number 47. It's our longest standing infrastructure issue. Since last week, I took a look at Drush and what people had encountered so far, and then basically the big problem is that we can't get Drush to properly identify Backdrop without trying to treat it like 777 in a way that doesn't work. But we filed a pull request against Drush 8 last week, and it has since been merged, that solves that problem of Drush not being able to, it treats it so much like 777 that it has to match the directory structure of 777. And so that was causing an issue where Backdrop has a directory structure that has a core directory and is more similar to 888, and so it couldn't find where the bootstrap files lived. But we fixed that so that now the boot class, so 666 has a boot class, 777 has a boot class, 888 has a boot class that tells each one of those systems how to interact with Drush. And what we've been doing is making a Backdrop boot class. And boot classes now have the ability to identify which version of the software they are, which was the problem we were having earlier. So that PR has been merged in, and it means that we're pretty well unblocked on getting that working. At my local copy of Drush, actually, the extension I have actually works for the most part, but there's some things that are like a little bit too dangerous at this point. Like if you did Drush up, for example, to update from an update server, it would still connect to Drupal.org, or Drush DL would download like a 777 version of a module rather than a Backdrop version of a module. So we've got some work cut out for us to make those things work. But things like Drush CCAll or Drush SQL CLI, all of those commands that don't require remote services all work really pretty well. So I'm hoping I'll push out a copy of that somewhere, maybe just my local or my personal GitHub repository for the time being until that becomes a little bit more stabilized.
So what's the difference between Drush 7 and Drush 8?
So yeah, is it in Drush 7 too? I actually filed the pull request for both 7 and 8, but Greg said that he wasn't going to implement it in Drush 7. So I tried to get it into 7, but basically there's no release of Drush 8, which is the really unfortunate thing. It's basically just the master branch of the Drush project at this point. So yeah, so we need to use Drush 8 in order for this to work. What's that?
Do you know what the difference is?
No, not really. They're really similar.
Yeah.
I think that
I was originally under the impression that Drush 7 was for 777 and Drush 8 was for 888, and that's why we wanted to use Drush 7.
No.
But I think the only difference might be that Drush 8 dropped support for 666.
I think that is... It's weird. There's still a bunch of 666 code in Drush 8. So it's a little bit fuzzy. I think basically they just stopped development on Drush 7 just to draw a line in the sand and just say this is for 777 and 666. And then I think they are saying that Drush 8 is for 777 and 888, but not 666. But it still has all the 666 code in it. It's also strange that Drush 7 has a bunch of 888 code in it, but supposedly is not going to officially support 888. So I think that they're actually the same code base. It's just that they've just decided to stop iterating on Drupal 8 code in Drush 7 and stop iterating on Drupal 6 code in Drush 8. But they actually still have all of the code from both. They still have Drupal 8 code in Drush 7, and they still have Drupal 6 code in Drush 8.
But if there isn't an official release for Drush 8, and Drush 7 isn't supposed to work on Drupal 8, and Drupal 8 comes out in 2 weeks,
right?
Then there will be an official release of Drush 8 in 2 weeks.
Yes. Yep.
I think that's not bad for us then to only get our patches into Drush 8.
Yeah, it'll be okay, I think, because people need to upgrade in the near term anyway. So.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's working pretty well. I'd like to probably do some more research, or maybe we need to file a pull request against Drush. I'd like to make it so that Drush, right now, a command is assumed to work on every system that Drush supports. So, like, if there's a command like Drush updb, for example, which is update your database running update.php. If that command doesn't work for Backdrop currently, it would be nice if that command weren't even displayed in the list of commands. But right now, Drush doesn't know how to make a command be version specific. Like, it just assumes that if you have a command, it works on every system that it supports. But I think that it would behoove them to make it so that you could have a command that was like a Drupal 8 only command, like config sync, right? Because there is no config in Drupal 7, and make it so that those commands would only show up on systems that were actually applicable. And so I don't think there's a system for that now. Just all commands are displayed every time, and if you try to run the command, then it throws an error saying that it's not supported. It would be nice if the commands just weren't shown at all. If they weren't supported on a particular platform. And so if we can get that working, then that would be good for us to make it so that we could iterate on our commands to make it so that only the commands that we know worked would be shown. Because right now, all the commands are shown, and some of them work and some of them don't, and it's a big, big mess. So.
Okay. That sounds great. Yay, Drush.
Yay. Okay. That's all I've got for Drush. I'll hand it back over to you.
All right. So next on the list is the Backdrop primary website, backdropcms.org. We just talked in the design meeting today about trying to get a design done for our profile pages so that when people log in for the first time, we'll be able to collect a suitable amount of information to display on profile pages. So maybe just username and last access is not enough, but we are going to be working on a design for that, collecting the information, and then starting to allow people to log into Backdrop. And I think this will be great if we can get the timing done like right around the beginning of the year, because people will be starting to evaluate Drupal 8 and they'll be wanting to compare Drupal 8 against Backdrop, and if we can give them a place to sign in and collect some information, we'll at least start to get an idea of who it is that's looking at Backdrop. We also want to let them do other things once they log in. So there's a couple of easy wins, like letting those people who log in list themselves as either a Backdrop service provider if they want to have like a company listing, or an individual contractor if they want to do that, so that people who are looking for other people to do Backdrop work could have a listing where they can find them. I also think we'll move our list of Backdrop supporters that's currently on the homepage onto that listing page initially, because even though those people haven't logged in and created pages and specified that they are providing Backdrop services, you can still click through to their website from there and contact them and say, hey, are you providing Backdrop services? Which might be useful for people who are looking for people providing Backdrop services. So that's kind of where we're thinking about starting with that. Also, moving the events calendar over would be much better than relying on a Google iCal feed that you have to email info@Backdrop CMS to get listed on. So I think creating a way for people who are organizing events, people who are attending events, or people who are wanting to attend events to log in and add an event and say, I'm going to give a Backdrop talk here, or I'm looking for Backdrop speakers here, would give us a more official location for upcoming Backdrop events. Let's see. We also want to add things like job listings and other things that have been super successful on Drupal.org. But I think higher priority for us is going to be getting a showcase up. So after we get the profile page done, our next area of focus is going to be on the showcase. And that's because when you're trying to sell Backdrop to someone saying it's a really great software platform, it can do all this stuff, it's really helpful to have a list of websites built in Backdrop and say, here are websites that have been built in this platform, and it kind of proves that it can do the things that you're saying it can do. It also would be nice for people to be able to log in and post the work they've done, right? So if we're going to give people a login to the website, let's let them show off the work they've done, get a link back to their website, get a little SEO juice that way too. So lots of work to do for our website. We'll get there. Okay, more exciting things, Backdrop itself. Our next release, we have a bug fix release coming out 1.2.3. There's nothing super urgent for that release, but we would like to get it out soonish. There have been a couple of new releases of Drupal since the last Backdrop release. Drupal 7.4 and 7.41 have come out. 7.41 contained only a single security fix, which does not apply to Backdrop, so we're basically ignoring that one. But there are a handful of features added to, or bug fixes, patches committed to Drupal 7.40 that we should cross-port for Backdrop. For our next minor release, 1.3, this is a user experience release. We have a ton of issues that are tagged. If you check out the milestone on GitHub of 1.3.0, there's a ton of issues that are user experience related that are tagged with that tag if you want to look at what we'd like to get done. A lot of them are little minor fixes that we can get done and merge in at any time. Some of them are bigger, more complicated tasks. Like, for example, we want to fix the field UI. That is a big, hard task and will likely take rewriting a bunch of stuff in order to get it in. We have follow-up issues that are smaller and easier to get done, like the layouts module has a bunch of new features we want to include. This is stuff that was included in panels, but we didn't get into core for Backdrop yet. We need to add those in order to make the experience of using it a little bit richer. Same thing with Views UI. There's a bunch of minor follow-up issues that we want to get into Backdrop 1. It also looks like there are people thinking of overhauling the Views UI. That's not something I think that's on the roadmap for Backdrop 1, but I think it's important to start thinking about it because that's another huge task. Much like Field UI, we know Views UI is not perfect, and it's going to probably take a lot of thinking and designing and mocking up in order to get that right. So lots of work on that as well. And then there's a couple of little issues that have been resolved in Drupal 8 that have not yet been resolved in Backdrop that I think it would be good to reevaluate. Things like cleaning up the way menus work, getting all of our admin listings converted to views, just a bunch of little tiny tasks that we should get done just to get them off our to-do list and to be feature comparable with Drupal 8. Let's see. Since 1.3 is just a user experience focused release, we've also started thinking about things we'd like to get into core for Backdrop 1.4. So now we're looking again at new features. So since we have an entire release cycle to think about what it is that we actually need in Backdrop, I think it's good to be evaluating things that are most important, things that everybody needs. And so far on our roadmap for 1.4, we have references. This is going to be a little bit hairy because we want the code style from references module, but the feature that you get from entity reference module. So we're just going to have to abstract out references a little bit to get that add a reference to anything kind of functionality. And then once we get that in, it would also be good to make sure that the taxonomy term reference that's in core matches the same model that we get by adding that reference in. So if we need to write an update hook or something to get things organized in the same way, we should consider that carefully as well. Another thing too that's been on our list for a while now is getting some kind of redirect ability into core. And I think that there are some easy things that we can do at any time that would be the equivalent of turning on a module like global redirect, which would do things like redirect from a non-aliased path to an aliased path, redirect from a non-clean URLs version of a page to a clean URLs version of a page. And that kind of thing I think we can put right in core at any time. A more complicated interface like a listing of all of the redirects in core and listings on any given node of redirects to perhaps that node or user or term. I think that is more like the contrib redirect module functionality we have now. That might be something we could consider putting into Backdrop 1.4. But I'd kind of like to see redirect module develop in contrib first before we just go ahead and shove that right into core. So it would have to follow a pattern much like token and path auto, where we got them ported first, and then we looked at the ports, and then moved the ports into core with whatever necessary changes. I think it would be great if we did that same thing for redirect. So if we can get, I think there's already a port of redirect module. If we can get more people using that, commenting on its how it works, what you like, what you don't, user experience feedback, stuff like that. The task there will then be to move that contrib module into core. And if we can get the global redirect style functionality in core first, using redirect module with that change in core, I think would also be good too, to make sure we don't end up in that infinite redirect loop problem that we have all the time with Drupal 7. So, hey, look, it looks like we're using redirect module on backdropcms.org. So it definitely exists. It looks like Jeff ported it, so thanks for that as well. But that's definitely something we're thinking about for our future roadmap. So far, we have some of these thoughts outlined on backdropcms.org/roadmap, so check there for continuing updates. As we're working on Backdrop, we're always interested in user experience issues and developer experience issues. So if you're writing a theme, or writing a module, or writing a layout, or just building a website, and you find some part of the process to be non-intuitive or overly complicated, open an issue and tag it with DX in square brackets in the title, because that's something we're going to need to solve. Not only is it important for our existing people, but as in the future we're trying to move the focus of Backdrop, its target market is going to expand downstream to PHP developers, people using WordPress. It's got to be more intuitive and more straightforward for everyone to use. So if you find something that's non-intuitive, let us know. We can think about how to solve it. Some of those changes can't be done in the 1.x release cycle because they might require API changes, but it is good to know about them and to start thinking about how we're going to solve that in the future. I know Wes and I have kind of a running list of issues that come up when theming sites. He made a whole bunch a long time ago, which was fantastic. I just started working on my first Backdrop site more recently, but I've also been developing a list of things that are a little bit weird when you're building themes, like how you have to, you can't really target a views block adequately. So there's I think we've got a bunch of issues we've got to clean up with the markup too as well, which might not be possible in the 1.x release cycle because we don't want to break anyone's existing sites. So trying to schedule a plan for the future of how, like what should change and how and when is going to be really important. So definitely let's constantly think about things to improve, and we can get some kind of a master plan going for Backdrop 2. All right, so every Thursday after this weekly meeting, we usually have a little sprint. All that really means is that there's more people in IRC, in our IRC channel, #Backdrop. There's more people in the GitHub issue queue. There's more people running tests and working on problems and collaborating things on Thursday afternoons than on other days. But that does not mean that Thursdays are the only day that sprinting happens. For some of us, sprinting happens all the time. So I would say if you can't get time on Thursdays to work on Backdrop, but you want to work some other time, log into IRC if you can and see who's there. And if there are people there who can help you, we're going to help you no matter what day or time it is. So we'll definitely take contribution at any hour of any day, and hopefully we can be around to help with that process as well. We do have, in addition to being active on GitHub, which is where we deal with all of our issues and all of our code, we have an IRC channel, #Backdrop. We have a subreddit at reddit.com/r/backdrop. And last week, Mike McCaffrey also asked that we try a GitHub-related chat tool called Gitter. So I created one of those for Backdrop, and it looks like anyone, I created it specifically for the Backdrop Issues project. So anyone who's commented even on any issue in the Backdrop history has access to that chat room. I'm not sure if anyone else uses Gitter, but I figured we could create one and see if it caught on, because it's a platform that people who are on Git are already familiar with using. That might be a better place for us in the future than IRC, just because IRC seems to be kind of a subset of super nerdy people, though I love IRC. There are also some issues with sometimes connectivity because it runs on a funny port. And I thought that might be a good thing to try. We'll see if it catches on. If not, we don't have to use it. If so, we could change or use both or whatever. So that's just something to keep in mind. Upcoming events. So we have Backdrop meetings every Thursday. That's just kind of a check-in on development tasks. We have Backdrop design meetings every other Thursday. We have a couple of Drupal events coming up. There is Drupal Camp Mexico, which I think is this weekend. So if you're not there now, probably not going to make it. And then there's a little break through the holiday season. We have Sand Camp in February and Drupal Camp Utah in March. Anyone else who has, Drupal Camp Chicago, I think, is also in March. Midcamp. Andy, do you know the dates for that one? Does anyone? No. It's okay. I just figured you're closest. Okay. Yeah, I'll check my email and we'll get that on the calendar too. But Drupal Camp Chicago, known as Midcamp, is also coming up, I believe, in March. And then, yeah, we'll try and get the website up and running so that people can post their own events, and then you don't have to rely on this meeting or our iCal feed in order to find out about them. So keep your ears open for that as well. I feel like that's all we have for this week, but does anyone have any questions or comments or anything we'd like to discuss? Sounds quiet. All right, I'm going to post the link to Gitter in in the issue queue, or in the chat here. It's basically gitter.im/ and then whatever the name of your project is, so including the project and the repository. So in this case, it's /backdrop/backdrop-issues. I'll also post a link in the agenda. But yeah, it does look a lot like Slack, which I must admit I really like Slack. I'm hoping I'll have a lower barrier to entry than IRC. And it works with your GitHub account, so it doesn't require signing up for anything. So yeah, we'll give it a shot and see how it goes. Nate, do you have anything else to add?
I don't think so. Andy asked if there was anything new in layouts land. Doc Wilmot filed a pull request a while back to add one field per, one block per field. And that issue is actually really, really close. I think that functionality-wise, it's looking great. There's a couple of minor things, like the modal dialog always says like add field block when really it should say add body field. But that's like a really minor UX thing, and it needs tests. That's the big thing. Is that the new functionality looks great, and it also expands our context system to be more flexible. So both of those things look fantastic, but we need to expand the test coverage to make sure it doesn't break, and that's pretty much it. So that'll be in 1.3, right? That's next release? Yeah, 1.3 for sure. And I think that his other pull request for adding a basic text block is also looking really good. So both of those are in great shape.
Great. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll wrap this up, and we'll see everybody on GitHub or Gitter or IRC or this meeting next week. So thanks for coming, everyone, and thanks for watching, and have a happy Thursday.
All right. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.